Story number 1. An Unwanted Visitor. I was a little over 25 years old when this story took place. I'd just gotten my first real job, and it seemed like everything I had planned to have happen when I left school was happening. I attended a dance school after I graduated. For the sake of remaining anonymous, I won't say what school or where it was. My only dream since I was a little girl was to become a dancer. My parents were only too happy to help me realize that dream. Not even halfway through my first year in the dance school, I was approached by some talent spotters. They liked my style and offered me a part in an upcoming show. Before I knew it, I was sponsored, I had an agent, and I was performing in shows almost every night. Anyway, this all leads up to me getting an offer I simply couldn't refuse. My agent got me the starring role in a play I adored ever since I was a child. The show was supposed to be running for 4 nights a week for a whole month. The best part was all of my expenses would be paid for, along with earning a fixed fee per show. It was a dream job that any aspiring dancer would kill for. My only hesitation was that I had to move over 2 states away from my parents and hometown, but it was an opportunity I'd be insane to pass up. I packed my things and moved to my new apartment. It was small and quaint, but I could tell that the money was spent where it mattered. There was a shared pool area, private parking, and I had my own balcony. Like I said, this was a dream job. The first few shows were great. I was 2 weeks into my month-long stay there, and I was thinking about staying in the city even after it was over. However, on my last show of the second week, I was followed home. At first, I wasn't sure. I spotted the man out of the corner of my eye as I was leaving the show. He was hiding in the dark alleyway next to the building where we held the show. He watched me as I walked down the street, and I tried not to make eye contact with him. I walked home, and the entire time I could feel eyes on the back of my neck. I swear I heard an echo of footsteps behind me, but every time I turned around, there was no one there. I practically ran the last block to my apartment and locked the door behind me. I instantly went out onto the balcony to see if anyone would try and follow me into the front of the building. Then I saw him. The exact same man that had been hiding in the dark alleyway was now standing across the street from my apartment building, staring up at me. I ran back inside and pulled the blinds closed. I'll admit, I didn't really react to it the way I should have. From the way he was dressed, I guessed that he was homeless and that he was probably just trying his luck. I figured maybe he wanted me to give him some money, so I left it alone. I stopped walking home after the shows though. Instead, I got a lift back with one of the other dancers. She stayed in the same apartment building, but she was a few floors up from me. I forgot about the whole affair and went about my life as if it never happened. It was the Wednesday of the 4th week and we didn't have a show to do, so I went out for the day. I had a small lunch and did a little shopping. When I got home, I was exhausted and lied down for a short nap. My bed was right next to the balcony and it was a pretty hot day. I decided to leave the balcony door open while I slept to get some cool air flowing in. I was on the 2nd floor, so I didn't think twice about it. When I woke up from my nap, something felt strange. The bed felt heavier. I was groggy from the nap and the heat didn't help. I slowly lifted my head up and looked around. The apartment was dark, so I guessed I'd slept a lot longer than I wanted to. I pushed myself up, but I couldn't get over that heavy feeling. It felt like something was weighing the other side of the bed down. I didn't have any pets, and I hadn't put anything on the bed when I lied down. As I sat up, I turned to look behind me. I can't explain what I felt when I laid eyes on the homeless man that had followed me home, lying in the bed beside me. His eyes were wide open and staring back at me. There was a cruel, sinister smile on his face. My heart sank to the floor. My mind stopped working, so my feet took control for me. I rushed out of my apartment, screaming my head off. I ran up the 3 flights of stairs to get to the floor where the other girl from the show was staying. I don't think I stopped screaming the entire time I ran up the stairs and pounded on her door. It was terrifying. She let me in and we locked the door and called the police, but the homeless man was gone by the time they got there. It's no surprise that I moved back in with my parents after that. I didn't even finish the last 2 shows. I always hate thinking about what happened that day because I was happy there. I could never go back, not when I know that homeless man is still out there. Story number 2. Taking out the trash. I grew up in a pretty high-class neighborhood. The lawns were all cut to perfection, the houses all looked the same, and every neighbor greeted each other with a smile and a wave, no matter how much they hated one another. My father often talked about how hard he worked and how much money he spent to make sure me and my sister lived in such a good neighborhood and didn't have to deal with the things he went through as a child. That was until the homeless people started digging through our garbage. I'm not against the homeless. I'm one of those people that believe the situation they're in isn't entirely their own doing. I'm also one for giving people second chances. My father, on the other hand, despises the homeless. In his opinion, they're lazy and entitled people who think they're owed something they didn't earn. At least, that's what he shouted at them whenever he caught them going through our garbage. I got a little upset when they went through our garbage as well. They often just ripped the bags open and threw the trash all over the ground. I would be the one to go out there with a shovel and gloves to clean it all up. My father basically waged war on the homeless people. He started staying up late or waking up early to see if he could catch them in the act. Then he'd run out there with a baseball bat and the family dog to chase them off. Our family dog at the time was a purebred pit bull, so it did the trick and the homeless guys usually went running for the hills. One day my father had to go to an early meeting, so he wouldn't be there to chase them away before they could go through our garbage. I, being the oldest, was given the task. My father woke me up around 4 in the morning, gave me his bat, and told me to sit by the front door with the dog and be ready to chase the homeless people off if they did come. I was half asleep and half peering through the window beside the front door, staring down the driveway at the neat pile of garbage bags on the sidewalk in front of our house. It wasn't until the dog started growling that I shot to attention. I spotted them walking down the sidewalk and heading towards our house. I grabbed the bat and went for the door. My father would usually run out waving the bat around and shouting, but he was also twice my size and an adult. I just opened the door up, but stayed safely behind the locked gate. I called out to the guys as they were about to start digging. I asked them not to, but they just laughed and rolled their eyes at me. I began threatening them, but the high-pitched crack in my voice didn't exactly help my case. They ignored me and kept on digging. I was terrified of the homeless men for some reason, but I was afraid of my father's disappointment in me too. So I picked up the bat, grabbed my dog's leash, and unlocked the gate. I strolled about halfway down the driveway before I started threatening them again. The homeless guys stopped and stared at me. They laughed again, only this time it sounded less like amused laughter and a lot more menacing. They straightened up, forgetting the trash existed, and started strolling towards me. My dog snarled and growled lowly. I backed away, pulling on the leash and tugging the dog back to me. The one guy looked at me and then glanced back at the open gate behind me. He said something like, "Thanks for opening up for us, kid," and then began marching towards the front door. My dog leaped at the man, snapping his teeth and barking. I could barely hold the leash with one hand and had to drop the bat in order to grab hold of it with the other. The man jumped back while the other raced for the bat I just dropped. My dog jumped at him, putting himself between the man and the bat. I quickly got a better grip of the leash and snatched the bat back up. I held it high in the air and began threatening them again. My little sister and mother were asleep inside that house, and I wasn't about to let those men run around inside like they owned the place. I waved the bat and took a swing at one of them. He took a step back as my dog jumped for the other guy. Between the two of us, we managed to scare them off. The one guy kept staring at me, even as they walked away. I pulled my dog back inside and locked both the gate and the door. I think I sat by the door for a while, clutching the bat to my chest and hugging my dog. I don't like to think about it, but if my dog hadn't protected me, who knows what those men would have done. Story number 3. Too kind. I like to think of myself as a giver. A lot of my friends tell me that I'm too kind and that I make it easy for people to take advantage of me. I don't deny that what they're saying is true. I've been taken advantage of in the past, and it seems I never learn my lesson because I keep on giving. I was raised to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. My parents did a lot of charity work, and I helped where I could. I still take part in a lot of charity runs, and I donate wherever I can. However, I always thought it was the small acts of kindness that are truly helpful to those in need. There's a small coffee shop that's just a few minutes walk away from my apartment. I usually walk down there in the morning, get a cup, and then catch a cab to work. There's this homeless man who sits on the side of the street just outside of the coffee shop, and I always make sure to give him a few bucks. Since I do it every morning, he's come to recognize me. My morning routine changed a little bit as the days went by. He'd always stand up when he saw me, and we'd have a chat before I gave him some money and went on my way. One day I actually bought him a cup of coffee and a muffin before I got into my cab. This became our routine. I'd get a cup of coffee and a muffin for the both of us, and we'd chat for a bit before I'd give him a bit of money and get into a cab to go to work. It all seemed so innocent. It was just a small act of kindness, and I really thought I was making his day. I guess the only thing I was doing was giving him a reason to take advantage of me. You might say I'm naive and maybe a bit silly when I tell you what happened next, but I just wasn't thinking straight, and I've always been one to give someone the benefit of the doubt. It was a bright, sunny morning, and I was walking down the usual sidewalk on my way to the coffee shop. I had a smile on my face and a box full of old clothes I'd brought from a charity shop in my hands. I was going to give it to the homeless man. When I turned the corner, he wasn't sitting in his usual spot. I was worried at first and began looking around for him. I got a bit of a fright when I heard him calling to me from down an alleyway beside me. I'm not entirely sure what he said to me. The whole event is a bit of a blur for me, but he managed to convince me to go down the alleyway to look at something. I put the box of clothes down and followed him away from the street. I followed him away from the sunlight and away from any prying eyes. That was when I started to feel a bit nervous. I didn't want to be rude. After all, he'd been so friendly to me, and I had no reason to suspect anything sinister was about to happen. He turned suddenly, and his hand shot out towards me. He grabbed my hand and pulled me close to him. Before I knew what was happening, he was kissing the palm of my hand and giving me all sorts of compliments. At first, the compliments were innocent, like, "You're beautiful," or "You're amazing." Then they got frightening. He started talking about my legs and how he wanted to see me out of my dress. He even said that he loved it when I looked scared. I tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let me go. His other hand shot towards me, reaching for the bottom of my skirt, and that was when I really started panicking. I slapped my free hand across his face and raised my knee towards his stomach. He doubled over and I stomped my heel down on his toe. He finally let go of my hand and I ran back towards the street. He didn't follow me. I raced to the safety of the coffee shop and stayed there until my cab arrived to take me to work. I didn't call the police or tell anyone about it. It was just one homeless man who tried to take advantage of me. Besides, I didn't see him sitting outside the coffee shop again after that. I still give to the homeless and I still help out at charity events, but I've learned my lesson about being too kind.